Right now, we want to end the suspense and reveal our all-time Bears team as selected by our Fox Bears insiders, Dan Pompei of the Chicago Sun-Times and Don Pearson of the Chicago Tribune. Here's Gary to do the honors.
This list is a pretty tough one when you consider all of the Hall of Famers that the Bears have had over the years. Sid Luckman, I don't think there's any argument.
No argument with
that. Yeah, they might be one of the few positions we have here where there's no argument, maybe other than tight end. What about running back? I mean, you've got Walter, you've got Gale, Bronco Nagurski at fullback, but there's some other people that could be here. You play with Rick Caceres.
The Chicago Bears are the only team that could have an all-time team and leave off 3 Hall of Fame backs. Patty Driscoll, the great tailback of the 20s, Red Grange, the galloping ghost, and George McAfee, the great runner of the 1940s.
Now, Mike, I'm going to skip tight end, but wide receiver. You know, people don't realize what a great receiver Johnny Morris was, just because, again, of the time that's passed since he quit playing.
Well, I do, because I played with him. I don't think there was any better than Johnny Morris. I mean, he had quickness. He had the ability to run a route at full speed. He did so many things so well, and he had good hands.
I'm sorry, but what about offensive line? Now, I'm taking a look at this list. It's kind of young because I know a lot of these names, but I think there were some guys in the past, again, Hall of Famers.
There were a lot of Hall of Famers who have been left off the list, and tackles Link Lyman and Ed Healy. I mean, we're Hall of Famers from the very early days of the Hall of Fame. Danny Fortman, the guard. I mean, he's one of the.
Yeah, he's one of the
Danny
best of all
Fortman
time.
Was 6'1" and 210 pounds, and probably the most feared blocker in the late 1930s and early 40s. He's also, by the way, the youngest player in the history of the NFL. He played at the age 19 for the Chicago Bears.
Well, we had a guy in 1985 that's a pretty good tackle. In 1983 through there, and when we brought him in that Jim Covert, so you know, I'd put him in here somewhere.
Let's take a look at the other side, the defensive players here, and my God, it's I'd hate to be picking this, so maybe Don and Dan did a pretty good job, but defensive ends, Richard Dent, Doug Atkins. I'd like either one of those guys on my team, but...
Except you got to remember Bill Hewitt. Bill Hewitt's in the Hall of Fame. He played both ways. He not only did not play with a face guard, he didn't play with a helmet.
And he never got hurt. But he hurt a lot of people.
Defensive tackle, what do you think, Mike?
Well, I think it's a new era. I think this is what these guys remember, Hampton and McMichael, and there's no reason not to.
I'll tell you what, middle linebacker, I'd hate to have to pick only one, because if I did, I think I know who I'd pick, and I think I know who you'd pick. But you've got Mike Singletary, who you played with Dick Butkus, I mean, come on, how could you not? And Bill George, all great, I mean, great middle linebackers.
They're all Hall of Famers. But then you look at it right there, Bulldog Turner, George Connor were made outside linebacker. These guys made all pro as offensive and defensive football players. You got to remember, in those days, they played both ways, and they played great football both ways.
What about outside linebacker?
Well, you know, when I think about the guys that we've had over the years, we've had a lot of good outside linebackers, you know, really. And the Bears, Doug Buffon has been outstanding football player. There's a lot of guys that go in this category. I played with Morris and Fortunato in '63, which are pretty solid, with Bill George in the middle. That was a pretty good group then, too. But it's just really hard. But the safeties, I don't think there's any question.
Yeah, you know what? I met Richard Pettibone. Yeah, you know, and I think it was an honor to meet him. But you know, that's longevity. I mean, Paul Krause has like 70-something interceptions. But when I was growing up, Rosie Taylor, he was a heck of a safety. And you look at Dave Durson or Todd Bell. The Bears have been very fortunate. They've had a lot of great safeties in this franchise history.
Red Grange was certainly one of the greatest defensive backs ever.
Johnny Lujack.
And Johnny Lujack.
Right. Johnny Lujack was a great defensive back, and people didn't even know it.
Well, let's not overlook special teams, because they seem to be so important in Bear history currently. But you look at the kickers, and Kevin Butler, you brought him in '85, and he's had a great career with the Bears.
Well, we had a great one in Bob Thomas, but I thought Kevin Butler had a chance to be one of the all-time great kickers, and when we brought him in, I think he's proven that. Bobby Joe Green is a punter. You know, I used to be a punter. But after I saw Joe Green punt, actually, after Coach Hallis saw him punt, he said, Mike, practice on being a tight end. You're no longer a punter.
I don't think there can be much argument about kick returner here. Gale Sayers, I mean, he was electric back there.
He was, and so was George McAfee. He was a great player.
Well, I'll tell you what, I think the key, Darren, is that everybody in this team deserves to be there, and there are a lot of guys who are probably honorable in special mentions. But we've got to get back to you, because we've got to keep going on this 75-year special.
We certainly do, Gary. And next up, we're going to take a closer look at one of the great running backs on that distinguished list, the all-time leading rusher in the history of the National Football League, number 34, Walter Payton.